Now we're on. Thank you. We have a quorum, and we are going to ask Dr. Laura Hall if she'll lead us in the pledge this evening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Dr. Hall, if you want to come forward.
Sure. Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Register, and board members. I am honored tonight to introduce to you our colleagues and friends from Guangzhou, China. I am fortunate to be on the Principals Academy of Design Committee, better known as PLAN, and I've worked with the China group for 8 years now. It's been a great exchange. Through Vanderbilt Peabody and South China Normal University, we established a unique collegial relationship that has lasted over many years. Dr. Shou from Vanderbilt and Dr. Hong from Guangzhou provided us with a great experience that we have cherished for many, many years. Our relationship with Guangzhou has provided us with a better understanding and insight to their education culture and their historical culture. We have learned about the power of their professional development, their peer-to-peer observation, and their commitment to the whole child. Their physical education, their social interaction, and their emotional development is evidence of their commitment to their children. We have lots of exciting activities planned for our friends for the next 2 weeks. I want to thank all the principals who are hosting our colleagues. Especially this year, PLAN appreciates the commitment that Kay Stafford has committed to PLAN as our new director, and Kay has hit the ground running. At this time, I'd like to introduce to you the #1 person who makes all this seem seamlessly, Dr. Hong. Please come forward, our Chinese guest.
Good morning, no, it's good evening. Dr. Register and Madam Chair, I'm so glad to be here again. During the past 7 years, I've been repeating this sentence I've learned in Nashville. Y'all be back, now you're here. So, and thank you for allowing us to be here to attend this school board meeting and also open the school to my colleagues from Guangzhou. We just arrived last night, but we have learned a lot even on the first day. And thank you, and we are looking forward to learn more during the coming 2 weeks. And we are also looking forward the school board members coming to Guangzhou to see our school system in the very soon future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we're honored to have you here.
And also, our principals, they have their, you can see they're ready, they're well equipped with their school banners. So they really want to leave something here in Nashville. They really want you to remember, the schools or some educator factors from Guangzhou. They only have some gift, which is made by their students and their teachers for a gift to you, is the token of their appreciation. So would you, Dr. Register and the Madam Chair, come forward to receive the small gift?
好，我们大家来跟他一起把这个礼物。
好。
OK，大家都把它。So all these are work done by the teachers and the students. 所以我们都一起的。So how about we just go together? We're going to take a group picture. 好，大家都往后面站，然后。So don't ask me to translate that. It's just too difficult.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate the gifts, and we really are welcome. We would really like to welcome you and hope you enjoy your stay. Please let us know if there's anything that we can do for you during your stay. Thank you again.
May I say a word?
You sure may.
I'd like to, on behalf of the board and the school system, welcome you to Nashville and to the United States. And for members of the board, several of you have not experienced this particular visit before. This has been occurring once a year, and we've also been sending a group of principals to Guangzhou each year. I had the opportunity to go a couple of years ago, and it is an outstanding experience to be able to experience the educational programs, the differences, see the differences, but to also look at the strengths from both systems. It's a great partnership between South China Normal University and Vanderbilt University also. So we feel like it's a very worthwhile experience, and I certainly, on behalf of the system, want to welcome all of you and hope your stay this week and next week is outstanding.
Thank you, Dr. Register. We will move directly into governance issues. Tonight we have one item on the agenda, and that is the discussion of state BEP funding reduction. And I have asked Dr. Register to start the conversation with an update on the BEP funding and how it will affect or has affected metro schools. Dr. Register?
Thank you, Ms. Mays. We get monthly installments from the state in BEP funding, and they're basically two classifications, classroom funding and non-classroom funding. Those installments come in tenths, one installment for each of 10 months. In October, we received in non-instructional funding $20,106,967 from the state. And the month previous to that, the total amount received in non-instructional funding was $23,481,900. So that October payment did reflect that reduction. The state funding total for the year in BEP funds, less charter and ASD reserve funds, is $234,599,000 from the state. There's a state funding formula. It's a pretty complicated formula. There is a booklet that shows this, and we'll be glad to make this available to board members if you'd like to review the BEP 2.0 funding plan for the system. I don't know if there are other questions you'd like for me to answer about that, but that installment's made once a month for 10 months during the school year.
Okay, thank you. And board members, the discussion tonight is, the expectation is that it is going to be open, honest, and from your perspectives. What I will ask you is that if you would like to make a comment, please signal to me that you would like to, and we will take them in order of the board assignments. Also, please be respectful. Everyone will have an opportunity to speak, and we are asking that you are respectful of your board members in your comments. We'll start with you, Dr. Gentry.
My first question would be, have we had any discussion, or is there a planned budget meeting to talk about how we address that deficit?
There is not a scheduled meeting at this point in time. We don't have an immediate time pressure on making decisions about the budget. I'll be glad about any changes in the budget as we go forward. I'll be glad to share some ideas with you if you want to go there, but at this point in time, we really don't feel a need to take immediate action as we go forward. This year's budget has been very positive for us. We've completed last year's budget document and our spending, what amount we've expended and what we have left. And I guess one positive thing to say is that last year's our fund balance increased. Last year our tax revenues exceeded projections, sales tax particularly. So there is not a cash flow issue. I might say that Metro government experienced that and the state of Tennessee experienced that change too. It looks like we're working our way out of the recession, and we're not in a position of having to cut funds at this point in time. There will be adjustments that we recommend, but I think that can be a very thoughtful approach to how we adjust going forward.
Dr. Brennan?
Just to clarify, there had been mention of cutbacks in terms of teaching staff and other positions. Dr. Register, could you just clarify that?
There are no plans to reduce staff at this point in time, and I really don't anticipate that happening during the school year.
Ms. Spearing?
May I ask a question of the chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Could you talk to us more about the meetings that you've had with the commissioner and how that went, and so that can be public knowledge?
Absolutely. The initial meeting that I had with Commissioner Huffman, I requested in order to discuss the possibility of the $3.4 million being withheld. During that meeting, we discussed the concerns from his office as well as the concerns that we as a board had about why the funds were withheld. Not go into every single word that was discussed during that meeting. Bottom line is, when we walked away from that meeting, we agreed to disagree on several items. One of those being that the board we do not believe that we acted unlawfully in our decision to deny the application. We would have to agree that we, to use Commissioner Huffman's words, are at an impasse on how we move forward. The bottom line here is that we expect to continue a solid working relationship with the Commissioner's office and the State Board of Education. We do not, and we were in total agreement on this, we do not expect that this issue will create an ongoing issue with how we work. Commissioner Huffman did say that he has had a very good working relationship with the Board of Education and specifically with Dr. Register, and he definitely wanted that to continue, and I agree with him wholeheartedly in that respect. We have to, at the end of that meeting, we walked away trying to decide or putting it on the table that we would both work very diligently to determine how we could move forward. There was nothing there was no solid decision made during that meeting on what steps should be taken or could be taken in order to retrieve the $3.4 million that at that time had not been taken from the Metro schools, but subsequently, of course, later was. We continued to have conversations. I continued to reach out to Commissioner Huffman's office, asking him what it was that our school board and the Metro Nashville Public Schools could do to prevent the action. Unfortunately, Mr. Huffman could not offer any solid information on how we could avoid it. It was left in the hands of Metro schools. As a result, you are all aware that I have reached out to Commissioner Huffman on several occasions, providing him with information on what our plans were to move forward. At this point, the last conversation that he and I had, it was pretty apparent that we did not, with the offerings that we put on the table, satisfy him. Therefore, the $3.4 million was taken from Metro schools. Thank you. Ms. Kim?
Oh, we're just going around the horn?
Yes.
I want to have one thing real quick. Dr. Register to Bill and Dr. Brandon and Gentry's comments.
Speaking to your mic.
So the actual felt impact, I mean, I've heard talk of a rainy day fund. Like, what is the real felt impact of losing the $3.4 million from the state?
Well, as of today, there is no impact. I think. Let me explain a little bit more. I'll talk a little bit about a recommendation that I would make, and it really deals with technology. The one place where our budget was really short this year was on technology funding, and there's a real urgency to fund technology in our school system. We have a requirement to do online testing by the year 2014. And if you'll recall our original request of Metro, the original budget document that we presented had a $20 million technology budget in it. By the time the board approved a budget, that number had been, to submit to Metro Council, that number had been reduced to $10 million. And Metro Council then cut the $10 million technology budget to $5 million. As I said earlier, we have our tax revenues exceeded projections this year. And as I mentioned to the board earlier in the work session, I believe I was prepared to come back to the board and ask for use of fund balance. The Metro Council has to approve that, but to apply, to put additional money back in the budget for technology, and that's for infrastructure, for schools, and for devices for students to use. It's my intention to still do that. But it would be at a lesser amount than what we determined originally that we could ask to fund out of our fund balance. So it's not so much what we have to cut, but it's what we can't do. If that is what it's not being able to go quite as far as we wanted to in addressing one of our needs in the school system. Does that make sense?
Yes, but to be clear, then there's no cuts that would be felt to the average student.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
That might have a little bit, yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Ms. Shepherd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief and succinct in my comments tonight. I am disappointed in the decision for the State Department of Education to withhold funds. I've stated that previously, and I don't believe we acted illegally in our vote that night. Having said that, I'm not of the mind frame to file suit against the State Department of Education. I think that would put us in an adversarial and contentious situation with the State Department of Education and many others who are intimately involved with Metro Nashville Public Schools, and there are many others who are. I'm hopeful that tonight we can, as a board, come up with steps to make sure that we can avoid this situation in the future and maybe even take some proactive steps and maybe even steps to recoup the monies that were withheld.
Mr. Pinkston.
Nothing, Madam Chair.
Mr. Hayes.
Nothing at this time.
Ms. Frogue.
Well, I did prepare a statement, and Ms. Gentry has said she's not a fan of long statements. I will try to keep it somewhat brief, but I feel if I don't say this now, then I will, there's no other format to say it. And what I want to say is that I have been, frankly, stunned by the state's decision to withhold money from children, and I feel that this is a retaliatory measure. It's punitive, and it does not hurt me or anyone else sitting up here tonight. What it hurts is children. And we all like to talk about this idea of putting children first, but I fail to see how the state's action in withholding this funding benefits anybody but adults. And the idea that this is not going to really impact children and that it is merely administrative, I find to be ridiculous. Because I think anyone that has spent any time in our public schools understands how much that our schools struggle to make ends meet. You know, the copiers never work and there are repairs to be made. There are always classroom needs that need to be met. So I have to disagree with some of my colleagues. I think that $3.4 million is actually a pretty extreme punishment for our students in schools. And the fact that we are now being put in a position to ask for it back, this is money that our schools, I think, this is our money that has been taken, and it's been taken from children. And so to clarify where I stand on this, I have said this consistently from the beginning. I don't believe that we acted illegally. And, you know, I knew coming into this job that some of my actions were going to be unpopular and some people might disagree with me. But I believe that my job as a board member is to use my conscience and my best judgment to make decisions. And I believe that I have a duty to make my reasoning clear, and I did in this case. And I do not think that I should vote according to passion or prejudice. Especially when powerful people demand that I compromise my conscience or my judgment and bend to their will. And so I also want to say that I voted on Great Hearts. When I made my vote, I acted to ensure compliance with the express written terms of the state's mandate and to ensure that the contingencies set by the state were met. And it's an elementary principle of construction that words are supposed to have meaning. If these words held no meaning for the state, I'm not sure why they were put in the mandate. And second of all, what I would like to point out publicly is that there is a state attorney general opinion that agrees with the legal conclusions that I reached. And our state attorney general has said that the contingencies in our remand order needed to be satisfied prior to our approval of Great Hearts, because our vote to approve a charter school becomes the terms and conditions of the subsequent charter agreement between MNPS and the charter school. And this opinion stands in direct contradiction to the legal advice that we received. So if we acted illegally, I question why the state has opted to withhold money from schools instead of taking us to court, which is what normally happens when people break the law. And I can say that I reached my decision in good faith and good conscience. And I remain willing to explain my reasoning to anyone who asks. I would also like to point out that although MNPS has been penalized to the tune of $3.4 million, Great Hearts would cost us $4.6 million during its first year in Nashville, and over 10 years it would cost us $75 million. So before we hand over that kind of money to any outside operator, I think we need to be sure that that school meets our standards and won't negatively impact other schools and students. The only justification that the state has put forth for its decision to withhold money is that we, quote, broke the law. And other school districts, I would like to mention, have recently been found by courts in our state to be in clear violation of constitutional law, and they have received no punishment. So my question is why our city has been arbitrarily penalized. And I have yet to hear a persuasive legal argument as to supporting the state's decision to withhold this money from schools. So not only do I believe that this board acted within its rights, I believe that the state has acted improperly. What is most unfortunate to me is that this whole process has been adversarial from the start. We came into our seats under threats. These threats have continued from the time we came in. Most recently, the Chamber of Commerce has inserted itself in this dialogue. And, you know, I would like to say that, you know, these people that are threatening the board, if they believe that they are going to influence my decision-making through threats and coercion, they are sorely mistaken, because I am going to continue to fulfill my role as as a representative of our city. We have been accused in the letter that we just received from the Chamber of Commerce of not doing our part to end the dispute, and I think that's completely inaccurate. We've been told that the state wants to reach some sort of compromise, that they want us to submit a quote plan, and I want to say that I am willing to do whatever it takes to ensure that children are not punished for my vote, but I think that we have made an effort twice to reach out to the state, and we have actively stepped back at our last couple of meetings to prevent further controversy during this negotiation process. And we received no response from the state until the eve of October 15th, when we were told that the money would be withheld. I'm still not sure what compromise or quote plan the state wants us to submit. And I don't feel that anyone has communicated with us during this process. And, you know, to summarize, I think that we have found ourselves as a board in an impossible position. We were told to approve a school subject to contingencies. According to our Attorney General, this board had to find that the contingencies were met before, not after approval. Some personally believe that these contingencies were met. I didn't. And as a result of our vote, we have children now being punished in the state. I don't see that anyone is trying to communicate with us, either before or after our vote, except to threaten us. And now I think there are a lot of people who are terrified that we might litigate. And I think that is probably because they realize they don't have a very good case. So I think that the best way to get this money back is for Commissioner Huffman to accept our chair's request to be part of and not adversarial to this process. This decision to keep this money is entirely in the state's hands, not ours. And this entire controversy could be over tonight if the state decided to do the right thing. This is their decision. And I, you know, would hope that we can come together to have reasonable adult conversations about where we need to go. But I think that if we cannot do that, I am ready to take this to court, because that is what courts are for. I think we have no other course of action if the state wants to continue withholding money from children in retaliation from our vote. And so I think it's important that we are good stewards of the resources that we have and that we act to protect the students. And I also want to say publicly that if we as a board decide not to sue, some parent groups are ready and standing by to litigate on this issue. Another issue that I would like to raise publicly is the fact that I believe that we need to go forward here tonight with no question of whether we have independent legal counsel. I think we have had some difficulty with that in the past, but I have some questions right now about the counsel that is representing us, and whether there are conflicts now or conflicts that might arise in the future. I understand that he represents 74 other school districts, which could potentially be the beneficiaries of the money that the state has now withheld. Should we go forward? Should the state go forward with keeping the money? I think what I would like to see happen is for us to interview some other attorneys and make sure that we are fully covered legally before we make any decisions going forward. And I understand that is a decision that we as a board need to make. But right now we have been working with an attorney, and I'm not sure if we have officially hired him or if we need to You know, I think that we need to have the discussion of what attorney we want to use for this purpose.
Okay, and if you want to bring a motion to the board, you have to do that at the next regular meeting.
Okay.
Bring that motion to the board at that time, and we will get it on the agenda, and we will have a discussion on it. Ms. Shepherd, and then Mr. Hayes.
Madam Chair, could we get some clarification from Mr. Cagle at this point?
Mr. Cagle? Ms. Shepherd, what clarification did you need? Speaking to the mic.
Could you cover some of the issues that we might face if we were to file suit at this point in time? What some scenarios might be for us?
Well, of course, any suit that's filed by the Metropolitan Board of Education, first you'd have to authorize any lawyer who represents you to file that lawsuit. The second is you're going to be asking for the money back. As I believe, as I have said publicly before, and this is a matter of law, this is not a matter of proof. I believe that most of the parties can agree that we, in fact, we can agree on a set of facts that are material to this case without engaging in a lot of proof that's disputed. The question comes down to the fact of did this board act illegally, and does the commissioner have the authority to withhold funds under the section of law that he has cited? It is, I think, those would become the issues. Now, beyond that, there's the public policy issue, and is there some accord that we can reach with Great Hearts that will satisfy the state and encourage them to bring the money back? Will that require some of the folks who are now saying that they want us to reach that accord with Great Hearts? Can we utilize their services in trying to reach some accord with this? And of course, I've never interpreted what this board is doing if it elects not to go to the litigation route. I've never quite interpreted that as just doing nothing. You know, this board has spoken loudly that it's going to provide a certain quality of education to the students in this district, and it's going to be the best quality education for the money that is appropriated to this board. And then sometimes not filing a lawsuit, that's not saying you're not doing nothing. That is saying that there are better ways to go about this for the future, looking deep into the future. Because however we approach this, it must be understood that Commissioner Huffman is going to get back in his chair in the morning on James Robertson Parkway, and Dr. Register is going to get back in his chair on Bransford Avenue, and we have to learn to coexist. That's just a matter. Education law is far different from general tort law, where litigants often don't see each other again. We're going to see the commissioner's office, and the commissioner's office is going to see the Metro Board of Education, and that's something that should be kept in mind. I don't think that if the board's decision is not to file a lawsuit, I don't think that should be equated to doing nothing, because there are long-term ramifications that have to be considered by a Board of Education in order to when you bring a lawsuit.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Cagle? Thank you. Mr. Hayes?
Just a procedural question. If someone does want to bring a motion to be considered at the next board meeting, would the person give a summary of the motion this evening, or actually word the motion?
I would assume that I would say that the summary of the motion needs to be worded at this meeting so that we can bring it to the next meeting. So, Ms. Frog, if you want to provide a summary of the motion that you intend to bring.
I would like to move that we as a board discuss this, the potential litigation that we might have with the state with other attorneys, and I am open as to whom we might want to hire. I'm not quite sure where we are right now. I don't think that we have already hired Mr. Cagle. I'm not sure if that is something we have done as a board. And this may be a case of us just considering other representation alongside Mr. Cagle. because what I have, my concern is that we don't go forward into this case, and should we decide to litigate, I don't want to be in a position where we are dealing with conflict of interest in the midst of a case. And so I would like for us to open the floor to talk to some other attorneys about this particular case and potential litigation with the state.
Okay. And if you will put that in form of a motion, we will consider it at our next regular board meeting.
Okay.
And I would also like to provide an opportunity for Dr. Register to give us his take on the situation, any information that you have or any discussion that you'd like to have.
I think I have no comment at this time.
Okay.
May I ask again?
I'll give you a reserve. Any other comments from any board members? Ms. Spearing.
I just want to say that the issue before us tonight is one that we've been dealing with since before the new members of the board were elected. It's taken multiple hours, multiple days, multiple weeks, and now multiple months. And it seems to grow worse rather than getting better. We have the responsibility to govern this school district and do what's best for our children. In this morning's Tennessean, a colleague stated that these cuts, if they stick, will not undermine the delivery of service in the classroom. I respectively but wholeheartedly disagree with that statement. If we have to cut or wait for months, maybe a year, to get the technology that Dr. Register just referred to, that's time that the children are not having the opportunity to work on those computers in order to take these tests that the whole system is judged by. Every gallon of gasoline, every penny that this district spends is in the service of education. And if the student doesn't come to school, they don't have the opportunity to learn. Every cafeteria worker, all the food that's prepared, it all impacts basic education. Every textbook, every staff development opportunity provided for teachers, all directly impact the quality of education our students receive. This $3.4 million is extremely important and must be returned. It is my understanding that 3 times since we have been approving charter schools, 3 times the state has remanded the applications back to us for approval. I won't mention the first 2 that were that this happened to, because I don't have all of my research done with that. But it looks like those 2 schools, the first 2 schools that were remanded back to us, are now on the path of closure because of poor scores. And clearly, the school board knows what's best for the students that are in metro schools. No one knows our charter applications better than our Department of Innovation. I think legislation needs to be looked at in this area. But the matter under consideration tonight is the denial of a 3rd application that was remanded back to the local school board to open Great Hearts with 3 contingencies. These contingencies were not met. They demanded, but the fact that they weren't met didn't seem to trouble the state board. They demanded Great Hearts be approved at the very next meeting, knowing the contingencies were not met. Rather than breaking the law, our board believes that we followed the law and demonstrated good fiscal sense by asking that the contingencies be met prior to approval. This makes good sense. What banker loans money to an organization with contingencies out in the periphery? It would be financial suicide. This is not the way businesses run, and this is a business. My question was, why is there such urgency in approving Great Hearts at the very next meeting when they weren't going to open until 2014 and the contingencies hadn't been met? I personally am, as I stated, I'm tired of this being the main thing on the table. And it's taken a lot of time. It's a distraction. And I would love to see us work with the state without litigation. And we have a short amount of time to do that. And if we can't get an answer, our money back, and a way of mending this relationship with the state board, I think litigation is what's in our future, and I hope that it doesn't come to that. We have so many reasons to have a good working relationship with the state board and the commissioner. We all want what's best for our children. And I implore the commissioner to sit down at the table with us and have an adult conversation on both sides about this issue and rebuild our relationship and solve our differences. Let's work together. This $3.4 million sanction is not acceptable.
Thank you. Any other comments? Ms. Shepherd and then Mr. Pinkston.
I would like to make a summary motion that we as a board charge Dr. Register to reach out in a proactive manner to the Great Hearts organization to ensure an application that reflects the vision and the values of Metro Nashville Public Schools.
Thank you, Ms. Shepherd. If you will put that in motion form, and we will bring it to the next business regular meeting. Mr. Pinkston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a lot of respect for my colleagues around the table and all the opinions that are coming out tonight. I'd just like to take a minute and point out that this evening was originally supposed to be a work session to talk about implementation of Common Core standards, but instead of examining how we are handling what arguably is one of the most profound shifts in American public education in a generation, and a major initiative of our president, our governor, and 44 other states, we are instead having the upteenth conversation about Great Hearts. I don't know what the rest of you are hearing, but the folks in my district are telling me they're really weary of this. The Great Hearts conversation has been going on for 9 months. If you go back to when they originally voiced their intent to apply, I think it's taken up too much of this board's time and energy. It's taken up too much of management's time and energy. And as Ms. Berrien suggested, it's a distraction from pursuing the scalable improvement that I know we all want and that our kids deserve. I went to Overton High School. In my economics class, I learned a term that stuck with me over the years, which is opportunity cost, which basically means what opportunities are we giving up in order to pursue something else. And I would just submit that the opportunity cost in dragging out the Great Hearts discussion is significant, and it is getting bigger every day. I share everybody's frustration about the loss of $3.4 million. I think the whole situation is especially troubling after the mayor went to the mat for us, along with the council, and asked Davidson County taxpayers to increase their investment in the schools this summer. Like other board members, I'm not interested in losing any money if we can at all avoid it. On the other hand, I do not think that months or, more likely, years of costly litigation, potentially costly litigation, is the right approach here. And others may disagree with this, but as a practical matter, I don't think we should just be resigned to being at odds with the state of Tennessee. I think it's important to recognize, whether we like it or not, local school boards are creatures of the state. What the state giveth, the state can take it away. If not in funding, then certainly in statute. And while I'm really troubled by the loss of dollars, I'm more concerned about legislation that's being formulated right now in response to the events of the summer and fall. The more we drag out this conversation, the more likely it is that we are going to be subjected to a legislative response. And as a result of the dispute over a single school, we may very well end up being the board that presides over diminished local control of the entire system. And that really, really does worry me. We got to get back to business and get this relationship back on track. The reality is the state funds 35% of what we do. We rely on them for a whole host of needs, including Title I discretionary grants, teacher professional development, relief from No Child Left Behind, resources to support our extraordinary needs for English language learners, and the list goes on and on. As a matter of fact, at the same time we've been arguing over $3.4 million in cuts, the state ironically gave us, without so much as a word of thanks from this board, I'm afraid to say, a $3.4 million grant to improve college readiness at 20 schools, including Glencliff High School and Wright Middle in my district. So again, the bottom line is, whether we like it or not, as Mr. Cable suggested, the state is a collaborator in what we do, and suing them is probably not in the best interest of the 81,000 kids we're here to serve. I will say I feel really strange. Ordinarily, I like to fight, But this is a situation where I've just got to stop and ask what's in the best interest of the system. I called a longtime friend last week who's one of the few voices I've heard encouraging us to fight, and his comment was, they started it. They, meaning the state. And let's just say that's true. What I told him and what I'm saying tonight is even if they started it, that does not mean we have to keep on with it. Think about what we as adults are supposed to tell kids in situations like this. We tell them to walk away. The easy thing to do right now is to keep fighting. The harder thing to do is to move on. Again, I understand that this $3.4 million, which is about 1/2 of 1% of our budget, is a lot of money, but like I said, there's a much bigger cost here, the opportunity cost to prolonging this argument. The single issue has become too time-consuming for management, staff, and this board. My view is every minute, every hour that we spend dragging this out is a minute and hour that we are not spending on sustainable, scalable reform that reaches all students, all teachers, all schools. This is a distraction, as Ms. Spearing suggested, and I hope it goes away. So I really do, again, respect everyone's opinions. I will give full-throated support to any proposal to enter into some kind of friendly mediation, whether that's through the motion that Ms. Shepherd is going to formulate or others, if that's even a possibility at this point. But protracted litigation, years of it, is not something that interests me. So thank you for indulging me, Madam Chair.
Any other comments? Ms. Brogue.
I just want to respond to a couple of things that Will said. First of all, this idea that we are now being threatened with, I'm sure he's referring to the statewide authorizer. My opinion on that is that the die was cast on that a long time ago. I think that there are people that are going to be moving forward with those sort of legislative actions regardless of what we do. And so, you know, I want to have open dialogue with the state. I do see them as we are going to have to work together in the future, but I also don't think that it's our role to respond to threats from anyone involved here, be that, you know, the state or any of these other entities that have inserted themselves in this discussion. So, you know, my answer is not to just roll over because there is a possibility that they may legislate to take away our power. The other point that I would like to make is that I don't like to fight either. And I don't know up here if anyone knows that about me, but I don't like to fight either. And I think that we are going to have to start a real dialogue with the state. But on the other hand, you know, this is $3.4 million that is supposed to go to our schools, and I do not think the answer is just to allow the state to improperly take money from children and from our schools. So, you know, if we cannot have these discussions, and I sincerely hope that we are able to accomplish that with the state, if we cannot have these discussions, I think we have no other choice but to litigate, and that's my position right now, and we will see where things develop from here.
Any other comments? Ms. Kim?
Just to build on what Will was saying, I mean, I guess, and Amy, it seems to me that it is not about rolling over or giving up. It is about being strategically sound and long-term, and viewing the long-term in the very biggest picture about what's best for the entire district. And, you know, to echo a lot of what Will was saying, I mean, it is an extraordinary thing that in the couple months that I've been on this board, that the vast majority of time has been spent on this one issue. And that is a very painful reality. And I think it is not a proud thing. I don't think it's something that we should be excited about or thinking that this is a good thing for 81,000 kids. And so I just must echo what Will was saying, is that in the very biggest picture, in terms of, you know, really doing what's best for 81,000 folks, it is not, I think we should move on. I mean, if there is a way to echo the full-throated, you know, support of some way that we can get to the table and figure out a different path to get the money back, that's fantastic. I'm behind that. But if not, then I'm with Will in terms of walking away from it. I mean, the other thought, too, is that aside from that, though, in my school visits, I've been in 10 schools in the last few weeks, and with more visits ahead. And when I see some of the challenges that we face, you know, including the fact that the average ACT score is still 18 within Metro, and the fact that 21 is widely considered to be the bare minimum bar for college readiness, I must say that this seems so tangential to that very core issue of what are we doing to get our kids college and career ready. And it is a painful thought to think about spending many more hours of our valuable time, discussing this issue and wallowing in potential litigation or, when we have much bigger challenges to take on.
Any other comments? I will make one final statement, and we will wrap this up for the evening. And I ask your indulgence while I read this because I would refuse to memorize. One of the first orders of business for new board members was the orientation session. During the orientation session, when I became a member of the Board of Education for Metro Nashville Public Schools, each new board member was given a business card that provided us with the MNPS vision statement. It reads, Metro Nashville Public Schools will provide every student with the foundation of knowledge, skills, and character necessary to excel in higher education, work, and life. I recall reading this statement several times that evening in order to get a clear understanding of the expectation of the duties of the office that I was about to be sworn into. It became clear to me that in the hands of this 9-member Board of Education, we were being charged with upholding the quality of academic success for every child that MNPS serves. It was my belief then, and still is now, that no matter how difficult fulfilling that obligation may seem sometimes, my role as a school board member means that every decision I make on behalf of every student must be just that, for every student in Metro Nashville Public Schools. When I took the oath of office to serve as a school board member, I knew that at no time during my tenure could I ever forget the reason that I was serving in this capacity, again, for every student in MNPS. I was also reminded that while our meetings would by law always be held in the public, they are not public meetings. Over the last few weeks, this Board of Education has been charged with not performing the duties set forth by the office in which we were duly elected to. That is unfortunate. Further, my ability to effectively lead this board as chair has been unfairly questioned based on the denial of one charter organization that was clearly not willing to adhere to the requirements set forth by this district when making application to open a charter school. Again, unfortunate. There has been much speculation on whether or not this board acted in an unlawful manner when we cast a vote to deny the mandated approval of Great Hearts Academy by the Tennessee State Board of Education. To that, I have said and will continue to say that this board acted in the best interest of all the students we serve. I assert that the law as it is written does not allow for contingencies to be offered in this case, and for the Tennessee State Board of Education, an appointed body, to attempt to dictate to the Metro Nashville Board of Public Education, an elected body, that we must with great urgency approve the charter application of Great Hearts Academy with contingencies was not only unfair but unjust. These were the same contingencies that were the reason for the initial denial of the application by the MNPS Board of Education. As a result of our actions, we were assessed a penalty of $3.4 million in basic education, or BEP funding, by the Commissioner of Education, also an appointed position. By definition, the funds generated by the BEP are what the state has defined as sufficient to provide a basic level of education for Tennessee students. While the Commissioner of Education maintains that the funds withheld are a non-classroom classification, the truth is that withholding these funds will impact every child in our classrooms. While there has been tremendous support from many in the community for the board's decision, there has also been opposition. We recently received a letter from a representative of a well-known member of the philanthropic community expressing his deep disappointment in the MNPS Board of Education for the loss of $3.4 million and the mishandling of the board's fiduciary responsibility. The letter went on to say that it is the responsibility of the school board to restore these funds from the state. Finally, the letter lays the blame for this issue squarely at the feet of the MNPS Board of Education and states that until the $3.4 million is reinstated, that the time, money, and support for our schools will remain on the sideline. It is again unfortunate that some in the philanthropic community would take the same path as the Commissioner of Education in withholding funds for over 81,000 students based on denial of a charter application for one organization who, if their charter had been approved, would have served less than 1% of the overall MNPS student population during their first year. While I will admit that mistakes were made on all sides, the Board of Education is not the sole owner of those mistakes, and we will not be held solely accountable for repairing them. This board has made many efforts to no avail to the Commissioner of Education to work towards a resolution of this issue that would be agreeable for all to allow our funding to be reinstated. To date, no such agreements have been made, and as a result, our funding was withheld. At this stage, it is the responsibility of the Commissioner of Education to restore the BEP funds to MNPS. It is not our responsibility to continue to go after these funds and demand that they be returned. We have worked diligently with this office on several occasions. We will continue to work diligently with this office. We have reached a place at this point where we need to stop and consider our actions. We must stop and consider the reasons I believe we made the decision to become school board members, our children. Over the last few months, we have been deeply involved in a controversy that has taken the focus off our children and placed it in the middle of an adult tug-of-war. It is time for us as a board to get back to the work we were elected to do. During these last few weeks, board members have received emails, phone calls, and many requests for media interviews. I would like to publicly commend each of you for your openness and your candor in the statements you've made over the last few weeks and this evening as well. As a new board, it is regrettable that our first order of business has been an issue that has taken such a toll. However, you all have continued in your commitment and dedication to the students in our school district, and for that I thank you. This has been a very contentious event. And as Ms. Baring said, it has gone on for several months. It is unfortunate. It is time for us to do what we do best. It is time for us to get back to the business of educating our children. Are there any other comments, questions, or concerns? We are adjourned.